The day I filled my trash can with concrete and watched our HOA president try to kick it over was, without question, one of the most satisfying moments of my life. 6 months. 47 knocked-over trash cans. One widowed electrician finally fighting back against a woman who thought my late wife's medical bills made me unfit for her perfect suburban kingdom. It's 6:47 a.m. Delilah Thornfield, queen of passive aggression, is power-walking toward my driveway in that blinding pink tracksuit she probably thinks makes her look youthful instead of ridiculous. The morning dew crunches under her overpriced sneakers. She has no idea that my perfectly ordinary-looking garbage bin now hides 320 pounds of quick-set concrete. The chemical tang still lingers faintly in the air from yesterday's pour. When her foot meets immovable physics, the sound echoes like a rifle shot. Her yelp, pure startled pain, hits the quiet street like music. I sip my coffee and smile. Pure symphony. Tell me, what would you do if someone with fake authority and a god complex targeted your family when you were at your lowest? Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I'd bet my last paycheck your HOA nightmares aren't far off from mine. My name's Marcus Rivera, and 3 years ago, I thought I'd found the perfect place to rebuild my life. Pinehurst Meadows looked like something painted straight out of a Norman Rockwell daydream. Tree-lined streets, trimmed lawns, and the kind of old-fashioned small-town charm that made you think good neighbors still existed. I had just buried my wife, Sarah, after 2 brutal years of fighting pancreatic cancer. The bills had devoured everything. Our savings, our emergency fund, even our plans for retirement. By the time the insurance settlement and bankruptcy court wrapped up, I had just enough for a modest down payment on a small ranch house in this quiet subdivision, a place where my 16-year-old daughter, Clue, could finish high school without watching her dad drown in stress. Every morning, I'd sit on the back deck with a mug of black coffee, breathing in the scent of pine needles and wet earth. The cardinals sang in the towering trees, and the world, for a brief moment, felt gentle again, simple, quiet. It wasn't luxury, but after losing Sarah, it was peace, and peace was priceless. Pinehurst Meadows had 127 homes and a homeowners association that collected $180 a month, just enough for lawn service and snow removal. Nothing extravagant. Most of us were working people, teachers, mechanics, nurses, retirees, folks who'd clawed their way to stability through overtime, sacrifice, and hospital bills. Then there was Delilah Thornfield. If the term HOA villain were in the dictionary, her photo would have been next to it. Platinum hair that never dared move in the breeze. Makeup so precise it could have been done with a scalpel. Her wardrobe? A rotating display of pastel athleisure. Outfits that cost more than my truck payment. She lived in the corner mansion, the kind of house with a circular driveway and so many floodlights it looked like a small airport at night. Delilah had been HOA president for 3 years, and she treated that volunteer title like divine appointment. Her white Lexus SUV gleamed like it had never seen dust. She carried a leather portfolio everywhere, as if she were heading to a board meeting instead of measuring her neighbor's grass. Height. Here's the thing about inherited money. It convinces people they're qualified to judge who deserves to live near them. Delilah had never worked a hard day in her life. Never juggled bills, never faced a shut-off notice, never sat up late wondering which medical invoice could wait until next month. You could see it in her soft hands, and in the disgusted way she glanced at my beat-up work truck rumbling past during her morning walks. What I didn't realize was that public property, records, and bankruptcy filings were her kind of bedtime reading. Some people do crosswords. Delilah researched her new neighbors. 3 weeks after moving in, I met her routine the hard way. Tuesday, trash day. Simple setup. Roll the bin to the curb Monday night. Pickup happens early Tuesday. Easy. That first Tuesday I came home to find my driveway carpeted in garbage. Banana peels, junk mail, glass shards. The stench hit before I reached the porch. Must have been an accident, I thought. Maybe the truck's lift arm slipped. The second Tuesday, same mess. The third again. That's when the pattern became impossible to ignore. None of my neighbors had this problem, just me, the widower with the beat-up Ford and calloused hands. So I started watching. Delilah's morning fitness march happened like clockwork every Tuesday at 6:45 a.m. Pink tracksuit, designer sneakers, earbuds in, and that purposeful bounce of someone convinced the world is their treadmill. The fourth Tuesday, I sat at my kitchen window with a mug of coffee and front row seats. Sure enough, she strutted into view, looked both ways like a petty criminal, and with a smug little smirk, hip-checked my trash bin straight into the street, then kept walking, as if gravity itself had obeyed her command. Every other bin on her route remained untouched. That's when I knew I'd been targeted, and this was just her opening move. If grief teaches you anything, it's patience. And when you're being stalked by a suburban tyrant, you learn the power of documentation. So, I did what any sane person in 2025 would do. I installed a Ring doorbell camera. Took me 20 minutes and 1 cup of coffee. The satisfaction of knowing I'd finally catch her in 1080p glory, immeasurable. Tuesday rolled around again. 6:47 a.m., my phone buzzed with a motion alert. There she was, the pink menace herself, marching down the sidewalk like she owned it. She glanced around, checked that no one was watching, then gave my bin the same arrogant shove. This time, though, the camera caught everything. Her face, her posture, even the tiny self-satisfied grin as she strutted away. I had her. Proof, in high definition. But that's where things went from funny to infuriating. 3 days later, I opened my mailbox to find an official HOA violation notice. Apparently, my surveillance device was creating an atmosphere of intimidation. The letter, dripping with Delilah's elegant cursive signature, demanded immediate removal of my camera or face escalating fines starting at $100. Unfortunately for her, I'd already done my homework. After Sarah's death, I'd spent months buried in legal paperwork and property laws. I knew exactly what my rights were. Homeowners are legally allowed to record anything visible from their property, public sidewalks included. The courts had settled that debate long ago, so I did what any decent, law-abiding American would do. I ignored her completely. The retaliation came swiftly. Delilah launched her own personal surveillance crusade, armed with a notebook, a measuring tape, and the moral righteousness of a medieval inquisitor. Every morning after her trash bin assault, she'd stalk my property line, scribbling notes like a private detective with too much time on her hands. And then I discovered something magical about modern technology. If she wanted to play spy games, I had better tools. Within a week, I had 3 more cameras installed. Camera 2 caught her measuring my grass with a literal ruler. Apparently, 3.2 inches violated the 3-inch maximum. Camera 3 recorded her photographing my daughter's parked car because the angle offended her community standards. Camera 4, my personal favorite, captured her timing my Christmas lights with a stopwatch to prove I left them up until January 8th instead of taking them down on New Year's Day. And you know what's funnier than watching a grown woman measure grass with a ruler at 7 a.m.? Watching her do it while 3 cameras record every obsessive, self-important second. But I wasn't just collecting evidence. I was doing homework. Late nights after Chloe went to bed, I dove into HOB laws, state regulations, and property law. That's when I stumbled across something interesting in the county recorder's office. Delilah had never filed the required annual treasurer reports for the past 3 years. I remembered reading about this during my own financial troubles. Most states require HOA boards to file annual financial disclosures with the State Corporation Commission, and missing these filings can void the HOA's legal authority entirely. I started asking innocent questions on our neighborhood Facebook group. Hey neighbors, can anyone help me understand HOA financial transparency requirements? Just trying to be a good community member. The post seemed harmless enough, but it triggered something unexpected. Other residents started asking their own questions about where their monthly dues were going. Delilah's reaction was immediate and nuclear. She called an emergency HOA board meeting for the following Thursday. The agenda had exactly 1 item: disruptive resident behavior and surveillance overreach. Only 12 residents showed up out of 127, which should tell you something about how much people cared about Delilah's manufactured crisis. The meeting washled in the community center that smelled like industrial coffee and broken dreams. Delilah sat at a folding table with 2 other board members, an elderly couple who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else, and a working mom who kept checking her phone. "We're here tonight," Delilah announced with the gravity of someone declaring war toe dress, the concerning behavior of our newest resident, who has created an atmosphere of intimidation through excessive surveillance equipment. I let her talk for 15 minutes. She painted me as some kind of paranoid newcomer with a grudge against community standards. She mentioned my suspicious background and financial instability. She even suggested that my cameras were making other residents uncomfortable in their own neighborhood. When she finally finished her performance, I opened my laptop and played the video. 47 seconds of Delilah deliberately destroying my property set to the gentle sounds of morning birds chirping. The room went dead silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights and someone's uncomfortable cough. "Mrs. Thornfield," I said, closing the laptop with a satisfying click. "I installed these cameras because someone keeps vandalizing my trash can. Now I know who." The elderly board members shifted in their seats. The working mom put down her phone. Delilah's face turned the same shade as her morning tracksuit. That's when I met my first ally. After the meeting ended, a woman approached me in the parking lot. Gladys Kowalski, 74 years old, retired elementary school teacher with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much neighborhood drama. She waited until Delilah's white Lexus disappeared around the corner, its engine purring like a satisfied cat. "She's targeting you because of your wife's medical bills," Gladys said quietly, her weathered hands clutching a faded purse. "Public records show the bankruptcy filing. Delilah thinks families with medical debt bring down property values." The smell of her lavender perfume mixed with the evening air as she explained Delilah's pattern. Last year, she'd forced out a single mother by filing dozens of violations until the woman couldn't afford the fines. The year before that, an elderly man on a fixed income sold his house below market value just to escape the harassment. "She researches every new resident like she's the FBI," Gladys whispered. "Looks for vulnerabilities, then exploits them systematically." I thanked Gladys and drove home with my head spinning. This wasn't about trash cans. It was about systematic harassment of anyone Delilah deemed undesirable for her perfect neighborhood. The next morning, I decided to fight back with information. I created an anonymous survey titled Pinehurst Meadows Community Satisfaction and spent the weekend going door to door with Gladys as my unofficial guide. What we discovered made my stomach churn like bad coffee. 8 residents had received excessive violations in the past 2 years. The pattern was crystal clear. Single parents, elderly folks on fixed incomes, and blue-collar workers like me. Meanwhile, Delilah escalated her own game. She'd apparently made friends with her cousin's husband who worked for city code enforcement. Suddenly, I received a violation notice from the city, not the HOA, claiming I'd performed unlicensed electrical work on my property. Their friends, that outdoor outlet I'd installed for Christmas lights. The same one that had triggered her stopwatch timing. The fine was $500 plus a mandatory inspection fee. The taste of bitter defeat filled my mouth as I read the notice, but then my electrician brain kicked in. Here's the thing about selective enforcement. I'd learned during my research into property law after Sarah's medical bankruptcy that targeting specific residents while ignoring identical violations elsewhere can constitute harassment under civil rights law. The key was proving the pattern, which meant more homework. I spent my lunch break at the county recorder's office pulling electrical permits for the entire neighborhood. What I found was poetry in motion. 90% of homes had similar violations, including Delilah's outdoor kitchen installation that she'd bragged about on Facebook. I printed copies of every permit violation in the neighborhood and highlighted the inconsistencies. Then I did something that would have made my high school debate teacher proud. I documented everything and waited. Delilah, meanwhile, had started her own photography war. Every morning after the trash can incident, she'd return with a professional camera documenting my property like she was shooting for Better Homes and Gardens. The clicking sound of her camera shutter became part of my morning routine, along with the cardinals chirping and the rich aroma of dark roast coffee. So, I started photographing her photographing me. Picture this: 2 middle-aged people having a paparazzi battle over lawn maintenance, while the morning dew still clung to perfectly manicured grass. I'd stand on my deck with my phone while she crouched behind her mailbox with a telephoto lens. The neighborhood kids found it hilarious and started mimicking our behavior, pretending to be nature photographers stalking suburban wildlife. Even my daughter Chloe got in on the joke. "Dad, you and the HOA lady are trending on TikTok," she said one evening, showing me a video some teenager had made set to dramatic music. "They're calling it the Great Pinehurst Photography Wars." But Delilah wasn't laughing. Her social media campaign had begun. She created a Facebook group called Pinehurst Safety Watch and started posting about concerning surveillance behavior and aggressive newcomers who threatened community standards. She shared screenshots from my Ring camera, which she'd somehow obtained illegally, claiming they showed intimidation tactics. The group gained 23 members, mostly her friends from the country club who didn't even live in our neighborhood. That's when Chloe dropped a bombshell that made the hair on my neck stand up. "Dad, that HOA lady sent friend requests to like half my classmates' parents," she said over dinner, her voice tight with worry. "She's asking questions about our finances, whether you work steady hours, stuff like that." The smell of our spaghetti dinner suddenly turned to my stomach. I realized Delilah was building a case for something bigger than violations and fines. She was gathering ammunition for a character assassination that could destroy my business and force us out of the neighborhood. The next morning, she made her biggest mistake yet. Delilah filed a formal complaint with the police, claiming I was harassing her through surveillance and making her fear for her safety during morning exercises. When Officer Martinez arrived at my door that afternoon, I was ready with my laptop and 47 videos of Delilah destroying my property. The officer watched 3 clips, shook his head, and closed his notebook. "Sir, You might want to consider filing countercharges for vandalism." As he drove away, I saw Delilah watching from her window, her perfectly made-up face twisted with frustration. She was running out of legal options, which meant she was about to get desperate, and desperate people make fatal mistakes. Delilah's desperation manifested in the most predictable way possible. She went straight for my wallet. The next HOA newsletter arrived with a bombshell announcement. Monthly dues were increasing from $180 to $220, effective immediately for enhanced security measures. Below that, a new rule requiring all exterior modifications to receive board approval, complete with a $100 application fee. And here's the kicker. The rule was retroactive, meaning my doorbell camera now owed $500 in unapproved modification fees. Late fees would compound daily at $25 each. I could smell the desperation wafting off that newsletter like burnt coffee on a Monday morning. Delilah was bleeding money on lawyer fees and needed to recoup her losses by squeezing the residents. The beautiful irony? She was proving my case about financial fraud with every bogus fee she invented. That weekend, I did what any electrician with too much time and a grudge would do. I researched HOA financial records. State law required boards to provide financial disclosure within 30 days of written request. I'd learned this during my own financial troubles when Sarah's medical bills forced me to understand every legal protection available to homeowners. What I found in those records made my hands shake with rage. Delilah's real estate company had received a $15,000 consulting fee last year with zero documentation of services provided. Bank statements showed unusual cash withdrawals that coincided perfectly with violation fine deposits. But the smoking gun was a pattern I recognized from my bankruptcy proceedings. Board members cannot legally profit from board decisions. When they do, it's called embezzlement. While I was building my case, Delilah was building her concrete plan. Every Tuesday morning, she performed her trash can ritual with the precision of a Swiss watch. My Ring cameras had documented her route, timing, and methodology across 17 weeks. She arrived at 6:47 a.m., approached from the east, and delivered her hip check with her right side while maintaining plausible deniability. The woman was obsessive, predictable, and about to learn a hard lesson about physics. The inspiration struck during a job site conversation. I was installing electrical panels in a new office building when the concrete crew started joking about immovable objects. Their mixer truck rumbled past, leaving that distinctive smell of wet cement and aggregate dust in the air. "You know what would stop someone from kicking your trash can?" The foreman laughed. "Fill it with concrete. Let them try to move that sucker." Newton's third law suddenly became my favorite scientific principle. But Delilah wasn't finished with her financial warfare. The following week brought her nuclear option, a formal lien against my house for unpaid fines and fees totaling $2,347. The paperwork threatened foreclosure proceedings if payment wasn't received within 30 days. I called Gladys immediately. Her voice carried the weight of someone who'd seen this playbook before. "She's done this twice," Gladys said, her words barely audible over the phone. Static forced families to sell below market value to settle their HOA debts. The buyers were always her real estate clients. The scam was elegant in its simplicity. Create bogus violations, pile on fees, threaten foreclosure, then swoop in with below-market offers through her real estate connections. She wasn't just stealing from the HOA. She was manipulating property values for personal profit. That night, I sat in my garage planning the concrete operation while the smell of motor oil and old paint cans filled my nostrils. 6 bags of quick-set concrete would create approximately 320 lb of immovable justice. I calculated the physics. When Delilah's 140 lb frame delivered her usual hip check to a 320 lb object, Newton's laws would provide a demonstration she'd never forget. The beauty of the plan was its simplicity. Filling my own trash can with concrete wasn't illegal. It was creative problem-solving. If someone chose to assault that trash can with their foot, well, that was their decision to make. I researched concrete suppliers and mixing ratios, learning that quick-set formula would cure in 24 hours. The timing had to be perfect. Pour Monday evening, let it cure overnight, and wait for Tuesday morning's regularly scheduled vandalism. Meanwhile, Delilah's harassment had attracted unwanted attention from the community. Our informal coffee meetings had grown from 3 residents to 15, all sharing stories of selective enforcement and financial irregularities. The pattern was undeniable. She targeted anyone she perceived as vulnerable or undesirable. But she'd made one crucial miscalculation. She targeted an electrician who understood systems, documentation, and the beautiful simplicity of cause and effect. More importantly, she'd underestimated the power of a father protecting his daughter's stability after everything we'd already lost. Monday night arrived with crisp autumn air carrying the scent of fallen leaves and possibility. I mixed the concrete in Gladys's garage while she kept watch for Delilah's evening patrol. The The mechanical mixer churned and ground, creating the foundation for Tuesday morning's physics lesson. As I poured the mixture into my specially modified trash can, I couldn't help but smile. Tomorrow, Delilah would learn that some objects and some people refused to be moved. The concrete settled with a satisfying weight, heavy with justice, and 24 hours away from perfect revenge. Tuesday morning arrived with the kind of crisp October air that makes you believe in fresh starts and new possibilities. But the real revelation came later that afternoon, when Gladys knocked on my door carrying a cardboard box that would change everything. "I bought this at Delilah's late husband's estate sale 3 years ago," she said, setting the dusty box on my kitchen table. "Never looked through it until yesterday. Thought it was just old books and papers." The smell of aged paper and forgotten secrets filled my kitchen as we opened the box together. Inside were the original HOA incorporation documents, early board meeting minutes, and financial records dating back to the neighborhood's founding in 2018. What we discovered made my blood run cold. Delilah had never legally become HOA president. When the previous president died in 2019, she'd simply stepped into the role without filing their required succession documents with the State Corporation Commission. According to the paperwork, the last legitimate board meeting had occurred 4 years ago. This means I started, but Gladys finished the thought. Every fine, every rule change, every lien she's filed for the past 3 years is completely invalid. She's been operating with zero legal authority. My hands trembled as I flipped through bank statements showing the systematic theft. Delilah had been depositing HOA violation fines directly into her personal real estate business account. The security consulting payments had gone to a company she secretly owned. The late fees, application charges, and emergency assessments, all of it had been funneled into her private accounts. The total theft was staggering, $47,000 over 3 years. But the smoking gun was buried in the incorporation papers. When Sarah's lawyer had helped me understand business structures during our medical bankruptcy, I'd learned that homeowner associations must maintain continuous legal standing through proper state filings. Miss those annual renewals and the entire organization loses its authority to collect fees or enforce rules. Delilah's HOA had been legally dead for 3 years. This wasn't petty harassment anymore. It was systematic fraud on a scale that qualified for felony charges. She'd been running a sophisticated scam, targeting vulnerable residents who wouldn't know their legal rights or couldn't afford to fight back. The beautiful irony hit me like a lightning bolt. She targeted me because she thought a widowed electrician with medical debt would be an easy mark, someone who'd roll over and pay her bogus fines rather than risk losing his home. She'd done the same psychological assessment on every victim, identify weakness, exploit it, profit from their desperation. But she'd made one crucial miscalculation about my character. Going through financial hell teaches you to research everything. Fighting insurance companies and bankruptcy courts develops a healthy paranoia about authority figures who demand payment without proper documentation. Losing your wife to medical debt makes you protective of what little stability you have left. I now held evidence of felony embezzlement, but direct confrontation would give her time to destroy records or claim ignorance. The smart play was to continue appearing defeated while building an airtight case for criminal prosecution. That's when the concrete trash can strategy became even more brilliant. Let her think she was breaking my spirit with her morning vandalism while I quietly gathered evidence of her financial crimes. Every illegal fine, every bogus lien, every moment of her fraudulent authority, I documented all. The power dynamic had shifted completely. I was no longer the victim fighting against legitimate authority. Delilah was a criminal who'd been stealing from my neighbors for years, and I was the guy with enough evidence to send her to prison. But first, I wanted her to experience what happens when unstoppable force meets immovable object. Tomorrow morning's physics demonstration would be just the beginning of Delilah's education in consequences. My garage transformed into a war room that would have made any conspiracy theorist proud. Whiteboard timelines covered one wall showing Delilah's violations and financial irregularities in red marker. File boxes containing HOA documents, bank records, and violation notices lined the workbench, where I usually kept electrical supplies. Maps of the neighborhood highlighted her selective enforcement pattern with the precision of a military operation. The smell of coffee and printer ink had become my new cologne as I worked late into the night building a case that would make prosecutors salivate. Jennifer Martinez, the paralegal who'd been helping our informal resistance group, explained the legal landscape over kitchen table strategy sessions that felt like scenes from a heist movie. Embezzlement from homeowner associations often qualifies for RICO prosecution if you can establish an ongoing pattern, she said, highlighting relevant statutes with a yellow marker. Delilah's crossed the criminal threshold by about 10 times over. The magic number was $5,000. Anything above that constituted felony embezzlement in our state. Delilah had stolen nearly $50,000, making her case prosecutor friendly with potential for serious prison time. While Jennifer handled the legal strategy, I focused on the technical preparation for Tuesday morning's concrete surprise. 6 bags of quick-set concrete would create exactly 320 lb of immovable justice when mixed with the right water ratio. I'd calculated the physics. Delilah's usual 140 lb hip check would encounter Newton's third law in spectacular fashion. The timing was crucial. Concrete needed 24 hours to cure completely, which meant Monday evening preparation for Tuesday morning demonstration. I'd installed backup cameras with 4K resolution and cloud storage, because if this was going viral, it deserved professional quality documentation. Our community coalition had grown to 23 households, all sharing violation stories and contributing evidence of Delilah's systematic harassment. Gladys organized these meetings under the innocent banner of Neighborhood Watch, while we actually planned the exposure of a 3-year criminal enterprise. The collective financial impact was staggering. Residents had paid over $31,000 in bogus fines, all of which went straight into Delilah's pocket. Some families had taken out loans to pay her fraudulent assessments. Others had delayed medical treatments or children's college savings to avoid foreclosure threats. Jennifer's journalist friend from the regional newspaper had shown serious interest in our story. HOA abuse is hot right now, she explained during a clandestine coffee meeting. Readers love underdog stories where ordinary people fight corrupt authority. Your concrete can angle is pure gold for viral content. We prepared a comprehensive press packet, financial evidence, video documentation, victim testimonials, and expert analysis of the legal violations. The timing would be critical. Expose the story after the concrete confrontation for maximum impact and public interest. Meanwhile, I perfected my psychological warfare strategy. I started acting increasingly defeated, removing one security camera as if giving up hope. I stopped responding to Delilah's provocations and let violations accumulate without pushback. The performance had to be convincing enough that she'd lower her guard completely. Delilah took the bait like a starving fish. Her morning trash can attacks became more aggressive, and she added new torments like leaving fake violation notices under my windshield wipers. She bragged openly at the country club about finally breaking that troublemaker spirit. According to Gladys's intelligence network, the concrete logistics required military precision. I sourced materials from different hardware stores to avoid suspicion. 2 bags from Home Depot, 2 from Lowe's, 2 from the local supplier. Gladys volunteered her garage for mixing operations, complete with wheelbarrow transport and cleanup protocols. My backup plan included removable concrete inserts if legal complications arose, though Jennifer assured me that installing concrete in my own trash can violate no laws. Property owners can modify their belongings however they choose, she explained. If someone chooses to assault that property, the consequences are their responsibility. We'd even prepared the criminal complaint paperwork. Jennifer filed preliminary documents with the state attorney general's office, creating an official paper trail that would prevent our civil case from appearing retaliatory. The evidence package was ready for immediate submission, once Delilah's public meltdown provided the perfect moment for maximum exposure. Sunday night felt like Christmas Eve for someone planning the perfect prank. I tested the concrete mixture one final time, confirming the 24-hour cure schedule. All cameras were functioning, cloud storage was unlimited, and our witness network was on standby. Monday evening arrived with the crisp smell of autumn leaves in anticipation. I mixed the concrete in Gladys's garage while she maintained lookout duty. The mechanical mixer grinding like a small earthquake. The chemical smell of setting concrete filled the air as we poured the mixture into my specially modified trash can. The weight distribution was perfect, heavy enough to be immovable, but appearing normal from street level. By Tuesday morning, this innocent-looking bin would deliver a physics lesson that Delilah would never forget as I placed the concrete-filled can at the curb. I couldn't help but smile. Tomorrow at 6:47 a.m., when unstoppable force met truly immovable object, justice would be served in the most poetic way possible. Newton's law should never felt so personal. Delilah's victory lap began the moment she thought she'd broken my spirit, with what she believed was my surrender. Her harassment frequency doubled from weekly to twice-weekly trash can demolitions. Tuesday and Friday mornings became her personal destruction schedule, each attack more brazen than the last. She'd have an added theatrical flair to her vandalism routine. Instead of subtle hip checks, Delilah now delivered full force kicks, while maintaining that sickeningly sweet smile she wore during neighborhood encounters. The woman was drunk on what she thought was power, completely unaware that every aggressive move was being documented in glorious 4K resolution. My performance as the defeated homeowner was Oscar-worthy. I stopped cleaning up scattered trash immediately, letting the mess sit for hours as visible proof of my supposed broken spirit. Violation notices accumulated on my door without response. I avoided eye contact during neighborhood encounters and let my shoulders slump like a man who'd given up fighting. The neighbors started whispering concerns about my mental health, which was exactly the reaction I needed. Even Chloe worried about my sudden personality change, though I'd quietly explained the strategy during one of our late-night kitchen conversations. "Dad, she's getting worse because she thinks she's winning," Chloe observed, watching Delilah photograph our property through the window. "It's like feeding a monster." Delilah's overconfidence reached dangerous levels. She began bragging openly at the country club about handling that problem resident who thought he could challenge proper neighborhood standards. According to Gladys's intelligence network, she was describing me as completely neutralized and using my supposed defeat as proof of her effective leadership. But her success with me emboldened her to target other residents more aggressively. Mrs. Chen, the elderly widow 3 houses down, received 17 violation notices in 2 weeks, for infractions like lawnmower tracks visible in grass and mailbox numbers fading. The 80-year-old woman was terrified of losing her home and had started paying the fines with her Social Security checks. That's when Delilah made her biggest mistake yet. She filed a fraudulent lien against Mrs. Chen's house for $3,400 in accumulated violations and late fees. The cruelty was breathtaking. Mrs. Chen had lived in that house for 40 years, raised 3 children there, and buried her husband in the backyard garden he'd planted. Now she faced foreclosure because Delilah needed more money to fund her legal defense against my harassment claims. Gladys brought Meth the news Sunday evening, her face twisted with disgust. "She's not just a thief anymore, Marcus. She's targeting the most vulnerable people in our community because she thinks nobody will stop her." That night, I made my final preparations with the calm precision of someone who'd been pushed past every reasonable limit. The concrete had been mixed and cured to perfection. 320 lb of immovable justice waiting in my garage. I'd modified a standard trash can by inserting a concrete core that appeared normal from street level, but would stop a freight train. The weight distribution was flawless, creating an object that looked innocent, but possessed the mass of a small monument. Monday night setup felt like Christmas Eve for someone planning the perfect surprise. I wheeled the concrete-filled can to the curb under cover of darkness, positioning it exactly where Delilah expected to find my regular bin. The smell of autumn leaves mixed with the faint chemical scent of cured concrete as I made final adjustments to the camera angles. Every detail had been rehearsed. 6 different camera angles would capture the moment from multiple perspectives, with automatic cloud backup preventing any evidence tampering. The timing was perfect. 24 hours of cure time meant maximum hardness for Tuesday morning's physics demonstration. I'd even prepared backup documentation. If Delilah tried to claim the concrete can was a booby trap, I had legal precedent showing that property owners could modify their belongings however they chose. The responsibility for any injuries would fall squarely on whoever chose to assault my property. Tuesday morning arrived with crisp October air and the anticipation of justice finally being served. I positioned myself at the kitchen window with coffee and my phone, ready to witness what would become the most satisfying moment of this entire nightmare. At 6:45 a.m., Delilah emerged from her house in the familiar pink tracksuit, wireless earbuds in place, carrying herself with the arrogant stride of someone who believed she was untouchable. The morning dew crunched under her designer sneakers as she began her power walk route, completely unaware that today would be different. I watched her pass 3 neighbors' trash cans without incident, building toward my house with the confidence of someone who'd performed this routine 47 times before. The anticipation was almost unbearable as she approached the moment that would change everything. At exactly 6:47 a.m., Delilah delivered her usual full-force kick to what she expected would be an easily movable object. Instead, she discovered that Newton's third law doesn't care about your morning routine. The impact was poetry in motion. The sound Delilah made when her designer sneaker connected with 320 lb of immovable concrete was something between a yelp and a curse word that would have made a sailor blush. She stumbled backward, grabbing my mailbox for support while staring at the trash can like it had personally betrayed her. The confusion on her face was beautiful, pure, unfiltered bewilderment. As she tried to process what had just happened, she attempted a second kick, this time with full commitment, and nearly lost her balance, entirely when physics refused to cooperate with her expectations. For exactly 37 seconds, Delilah stood on my sidewalk, testing the weight of the can, her perfectly styled hair beginning to show signs of stress-induced humidity. Then reality set in, and her confusion transformed into the kind of rage that makes people do spectacularly stupid things. She marched home and returned 20 minutes later with a crowbar and hammer. In broad daylight, with neighbors leaving for work and children waiting for school buses, Delilah Thornfield began destroying my trash can with power tools like a woman possessed. The metallic clanging echoed through the entire cul-de-sac as she attacked the concrete core with increasing desperation. Mrs. Patterson from across the street called the police while filming everything on her phone. The Schmidt family paused their morning routine to watch through their kitchen window. Even the garbage truck driver stopped his route to witness what he would later describe as the angriest lady I ever seen trying to fight a trash can. When Officer Martinez arrived 15 minutes later, he found Delilah sweating through her tracksuit, surrounded by concrete chips and metal shavings, still swinging that hammer, like she was trying to break through prison walls. "Ma'am, you need to step away from the property," Officer Martinez said, his hand resting on his radio. "This is vandalism." Delilah's response was a masterclass in entitled fury. "This man booby-trapped a public right-of-way. He's endangering morning exercisers with his militant behavior." I walked outside with my laptop and 17 different video angles of her destruction spree. "Officer, she's been kicking over my trash can every Tuesday for 6 months. I just made it harder to knock over." The police report that followed became official documentation of Delilah's escalating behavior, complete with witness statements from 6 neighbors and video evidence of both the original harassment and the morning's vandalism spree. But instead of accepting defeat, Delilah doubled down with the desperation of someone whose entire world was crumbling. She hired the most expensive lawyer in the county, a slick-talking criminal defense attorney who specialized in white-collar crime. Legal costs were mounting rapidly. Retainer fees, court filing expenses, and investigation charges that were bleeding her savings account dry. Her countersuit claimed I'd intentionally inflicted emotional distress through calculated psychological warfare designed to terrorize a community leader. The filing demanded $50,000 in damages for mental anguish, lost productivity, and damage to her professional reputation. The irony was exquisite. Delilah was spending a fortune defending herself against charges that would reveal her 3-year embezzlement scheme. Every legal motion, every court appearance, every document filed was creating a paper trail that prosecutors would follow straight to her fraudulent bank accounts. Meanwhile, her public relations campaign had become a train wreck visible from space. The concrete can video went viral within hours of the incident. Local news stations picked up the story with headlines like HOA President versus Immovable Object and When Karen Meets Physics. Regional outlets requested interviews, turning our neighborhood dispute into a cautionary tale about petty authority gone wrong. Delilah attempted damage control by claiming she was the victim of an aggressive newcomer's escalating retaliation campaign. She described herself as a dedicated community volunteer being terrorized by a suspicious resident with financial problems and concerning surveillance habits. But video evidence contradicted every claim she made. 47 documented instances of her destroying my property combined with her crowbar meltdown painted a picture of someone completely unhinged by her own petty obsessions. Community members provided counter-testimonials that destroyed her credibility entirely. Mrs. Chen spoke tearfully about being targeted with excessive fines. The Henderson family described systematic harassment that forced them to consider selling their home. Even some of Delilah's country club friends began distancing themselves from her increasingly erratic behavior. The court hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday, exactly 1 month after the concrete incident. Judge Morrison had reviewed the preliminary evidence and expressed serious concerns about the pattern of harassment and financial irregularities that kept surfacing in court documents. That's when Jennifer delivered the news that would seal Delilah's fate. "The State Attorney General's office wants to meet with us Thursday," she said during our final strategy session. "They're interested in the RICO implications of her systematic fraud scheme." Federal prosecutors were now involved. What had started as a neighborhood dispute over trash cans had revealed a sophisticated criminal enterprise that robbed dozens of families over multiple years. As he prepared for the court hearing that would expose everything, I couldn't help but appreciate the poetic justice. Delilah's obsession with knocking over my trash can had led her to knock over her entire life. Sometimes the universe has a sense of humor about karma. Tuesday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that makes courtrooms feel like theaters, and Pinellas County Courthouse had never seen a show quite like this one. By 9 a.m., the parking lot looked like a neighborhood block party gone wrong. 43 residents had shown up to support me, while Delilah arrived with a legal team that cost more per hour than most people made in a week. The local news crews were having a field day. Channel 7's Community Watchdog segment had set up cameras outside interviewing neighbors about HOA abuse while B-roll footage of my famous concrete trash can played on repeat. The story had legs, David versus Goliath, but with property law and physics instead of slingshots. Inside the courtroom, Judge Morrison looked like a man who'd rather be anywhere else than mediating a dispute between a concrete trash can and a woman having a very public nervous breakdown. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead while court stenographer fingers clicked away, documenting what would become the most entertaining municipal court case in county history. Delilah's lawyer, a $500 per hour shark named Bradley Wainwright, opened with theatrical flair that would have impressed Shakespeare. He painted me as a dangerous vigilante who'd weaponized construction materials against an innocent morning exerciser. According to his version of events, I was a mentally unstable newcomer with financial problems who'd created booby traps to terrorize community leaders. Your Honor, Wainwright declared with practiced indignation, my client simply attempted to participate in healthy morning exercise when she encountered a deliberately concealed concrete obstruction, designed to cause injury and intimidation. The performance was impressive until he made the mistake of showing security footage that Delilah had illegally obtained from my Ring camera. Judge Morrison's eyebrows shot up like warning flags when Jennifer immediately objected to evidence obtained through criminal trespass of digital property. Where exactly did your client acquire plaintiff's private security footage? The judge asked with the tone of someone who already knew the answer wouldn't be good. That's when Jennifer requested permission to present broader context regarding a pattern of systematic harassment and financial fraud. The judge allowed expanded testimony, and our real show began. I took the witness stand with a laptop containing 17 months of documentation. Video after video of Delilah destroying my property, measuring my grass with rulers, timing my Christmas lights with stopwatches, and photographing my daughter's car like she was conducting surveillance on a terrorist cell. The courtroom started murmuring when I reached video number 37. By the time I played the crowbar destruction footage, people were gasping audibly. Judge Morrison watched every clip with increasing incredulity, occasionally shaking his head like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. But the nuclear bomb was still coming. Jennifer presented the HOA financial fraud evidence with the precision of a prosecutor dismantling a criminal enterprise. $47,000 in stolen funds, fake board authority, systematic targeting of vulnerable residents, and fraudulent liens designed to force property sales below market value. The courtroom went dead silent, except for the air conditioning cycling and someone's nervous cough, when the scope of Delilah's 3-year crime spree became clear. That's when Delilah lost whatever remained of her composure. "This is ridiculous!" she shrieked, jumping up from the defendant's table. "I've sacrificed everything for that ungrateful community. People like him don't belong in quality neighborhoods." His wife's medical bills were a matter of public record. The racist and classist motivations tumbled out of her mouth like poison, finally finding its release. She ranted about property values, undesirable residents, and her right to protect established community standards from people who couldn't afford to maintain them properly. Judge Morrison banged his gavel so hard it sounded like gunfire. "Mrs. Thornfield, you will sit down immediately, or I'll hold you in contempt." But Delilah was beyond rational thought. "He's been stalking me with cameras, terrorizing me during innocent morning exercise. This whole neighborhood is turned against someone who's worked tirelessly to enough." Judge Morrison's voice could have stopped traffic. The Bife approached Delilah's table while her lawyer grabbed her arm, trying to salvage what remained of their case. But the damage was done. She'd revealed her true motivations in open court on the record with media cameras running outside. When the courtroom finally quieted, I stood up and delivered the line I'd been rehearsing for months. "Your Honor, Mrs. Thornfield kicked over my trash can 47 times in 6 months, so it made it impossible for her to knock over. I never imagined she'd respond by trying to destroy it with a crowbar, stealing money from my neighbors, or admitting that she targeted my family because of my wife's medical bills." The judge dismissed Delilah's case immediately, ordered full restitution for my property damage, and referred the financial fraud evidence to the state attorney general for criminal prosecution. He also issued a restraining order, protecting me from any further harassment. Outside the courthouse, reporters captured Delilah's final meltdown as she screamed at news cameras about ungrateful neighbors and conspiracy theories involving concrete manufacturers. Justice had been served, and it was delicious. The weeks following the courthouse drama felt like waking up from a nightmare into the kind of neighborhood I'd originally hoped to find. Delilah pleaded guilty to embezzlement charges rather than face a public trial that would have exposed even more of her criminal behavior. 18 months of community service, 5 years probation, and $94,000 in restitution. Double damages plus legal fees that would keep her paying for years. Her real estate license was suspended permanently, her husband filed for divorce, and the house with the circular driveway went up for sale within a month. Sometimes karma works faster than concrete cures. The concrete trash can became our neighborhood's unofficial landmark. Kids dared each other to try moving it during their bike rides home from school. The UPS driver started using it as a reference point for giving directions. "Turn left at the famous concrete can," he'd tell confused delivery partners. "Trust me, You'll know it when you see it. We dissolved the corrupt HOA immediately and formed a voluntary neighborhood association focused on actual community improvement instead of petty enforcement. No fines, no liens, no measuring grass with rulers, just neighbors helping neighbors, the way it should have been from the beginning. Our first project was a children's playground funded by Delilah's restitution payments. Watching kids laugh and play on equipment bought with stolen money that was finally returned felt like the universe balancing its books. The sound of children's laughter mixed with the smell of fresh mulch and new beginnings. Marcus Rivera Electrical became the most recommended contractor in 3 zip codes after the story went viral. Turns out people love hiring the guy who outwitted an HOA tyrant with physics and patience. My business doubled within 6 months, allowing me to finally set aside money for Chloe's college fund, something Sarah would have loved. But the most meaningful change was personal. I'd learned that standing up to bullies doesn't always require confrontation. Sometimes it means standing your ground, literally, and letting their own actions reveal their true nature. The concrete can taught me that some things in life need to be immovable. Your principles, your family's security, and your refusalto let petty tyrants steal your peace. The Sarah Rivera Memorial Scholarship launched with our first community barbecue, funded by media interview payments, and a GoFundMe that raised $23,000 in 2 weeks. The scholarship supports children who've lost parents to medical debt, helping them afford college, despite financial hardship. It felt like turning our worst experience into something that could prevent other families from suffering the same loss. Gladys became our unofficial neighborhood historian, documenting the whole Concrete Can saga for posterity. Someday, she said while organizing photos from the courthouse drama, your grandchildren will ask how you defeated the neighborhood dragon. You'll tell them you used concrete and cameras instead of swords and shields. Even Chloe benefited from the experience. Her college application essay about learning resilience from my father's trash can earned her early admission to 3 universities. She wrote about watching quiet determination triumph over loud intimidation, and how sometimes the best revenge against bullies is building something better than what they tried to destroy. A year later, the young family who bought Delilah's house threw a block party to celebrate their first anniversary in the neighborhood. Their twin boys immediately gravitated toward the concrete can, using it as home base for elaborate games of tag. The irony was beautiful. What had been a symbol of harassment became the centerpiece of childhood joy. The viral videos eventually reached 2.8 million views across platforms, spawning copycat concrete installations from Portland to Miami. #ConReatJustice became a hashtag for creative resistance to petty authority, inspiring people to fight back against bullies with intelligence instead of anger. 3 takeaways that could help anyone facing similar battles. First, document everything. Harassment patterns become evidence of systematic abuse when properly recorded. Second, research your legal rights annually. Most HOA boards operate with questionable authority that crumbles under scrutiny. Third, creative solutions often work better than direct confrontation. Sometimes the best way to stop someone from knocking you down is making yourself impossible to move. The concrete can still sits at my curb every Tuesday morning exactly where it belongs. Immovable, unbreakable, and serving as a daily reminder that bullies only win when good people give up fighting. Share your worst HOA nightmare in the comments below. I read every story and some are even crazier than mine. And hit that subscribe button if you love seeing bullies get their comeuppance through creative justice. Next week, the woman who turned her backyard into a butterfly sanctuary, just despite her neighbors' noise complaints. Revenge has never been more beautiful or legally bulletproof. If you enjoyed the story and want to support, you can always hit the little thanks button below. I'm slowly improving the channel, so if you like this one, drop a kind word. It really helps keep me going. Until next time, keep your ground solid and your water clear. Thanks for watching HOA Secrets. Share this video with someone who loves a good plot twist.